I believe so much in the mission of Beyond Meat that I've stepped in to help with my greatest asset, my taste.
We're all walking contradictions, right? Like, we say one thing, but our actions tell a different story. What do I mean? Well, you say you hate reality TV, but you know all the drama from watching the recaps? You're anti-capitalist, but you're still flexing your limited edition sneakers? You deleted social media, but keep checking your friend's phone for updates? You're on a health kick, but still find yourself in the drive-thru at 11 p.m. for some fries? You don't believe in astrology, but somehow the Mercury retrograde explains all your problems? You hate corporate greed, but never miss an Amazon sale? Or hold up, you never try to find local shops that probably have the same items for cheaper. You're a minimalist, or what do they call it now? An underconsumption girly, but own 3 different versions of the same outfit? But I digress. I guess we're all flawed, and that's probably the only explanation for why some vegans swear off meat, but still chow down on plant-based burgers that bleed like the real thing. Some contradictions are harmless. Others, they can cost the company billions. Take one of the biggest corporate contradictions in recent history. Built on hype, celebrity endorsements, and a promise to change the way we eat. But instead, it tanked. Hard. I'm Shelly, the skeptical CFO. And today, we're talking about Beyond Meat, a company that tried to disrupt the food industry, only to get chewed up and spit out. It all started with a problem that some people never think about, but a handful of dreamers couldn't ignore. The issue? The future of food, or more specifically, the future of meat. In the early 2000s, Ethan Brown, a mechanical engineer who had worked in the energy sector, was grappling with a question that had been lingering in his mind for years. How could we feed a growing population without destroying the planet? As he considered the realities of climate change and resource depletion, one issue kept rising to the top: the way we produce meat. The meat industry as it stands is straining the planet. Raising animals for food takes up enormous amounts of land, burns through water, and pumps out a hefty share of global greenhouse gases. Entire forests are being cleared just to make room for livestock and their feed. It's a system built for scale, but not for sustainability. But for him, the problem was more than abstract statistics. It was personal. Imagine this. You're sitting down for a hearty dinner, looking at a perfectly seared steak, when your mind starts to wander. You remember the cows you cared for and petted earlier today. Suddenly, that steak feels like something else entirely. Welcome to the conflict in Ethan Brown's mind as he worked on his parents' dairy farm as a teenager. His discomfort would lead him to become a vegetarian, and that's when the bigger idea started to take root. A plant-based McDonald's. But turning that dream into reality seemed far-fetched at the time. Ethan envisioned crafting something indistinguishable from animal meat, but made entirely from plants. In this world, we could still enjoy the pleasures of eating meat without the environmental damage, animal suffering, and health risks. Was it truly groundbreaking or just a pipe dream? In 2009, his search for innovation led him to a promising development at the University of Missouri. Professors Fu-Hung Hsieh and Harold Hoff had spent years perfecting a method to transform simple ingredients like soy powder, carrot fiber, and gluten-free flour into something that looked, felt, and tasted like chicken. Their technology was capable of producing the equivalent of 50 to 100 real chickens in just 1 hour. Recognizing its potential, Beyond Meat licensed their process and set up a small commercial kitchen in Maryland where they started producing and selling their plant-based meat alternatives to Whole Foods Market. Over the next year, they really got to work, scaling the technology, building a manufacturing footprint, and pulling in food scientists from universities in Missouri and Maryland. By 2011, Beyond Meat was attracting attention across the food industry. Venture capital firms like Obvious Ventures, linked to Twitter co-founders, and Kleiner Perkins, renowned for backing market disruptors, recognized Beyond Meat as a powerful force capable of reshaping global protein production. In 2012, Beyond Meat had debuted its plant-based chicken strips, which turned into a full-on cultural conversation. The idea of plant-based was suddenly cool. Even better, they came packed with all the buzzwords that health-conscious shoppers loved and skeptics rolled their eyes at. Plant-based, gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, GMO-free, hormone-free, and antibiotic-free. A label that reads more like a manifesto. By the year 2013, Beyond Meat was gaining serious traction. Bill Gates, perhaps one of the world's most influential investors, jumped on board after tasting a chicken taco made from their strips. He was stunned, admitting it was nearly impossible to tell the difference between plant-based meat and a real chicken. His reaction and investment added major credibility to the brand. That year, PETA named Beyond Meat Company of the Year, and checks came rolling in from huge investors and special interest groups like the Humane Society of the United States. As recognition and support poured in, Beyond Meat expanded its presence in grocery chains, bringing plant-based meat to the masses and catching the attention of shoppers everywhere. In 2014, Beyond Meat hit gas, launching its first plant-based beef product, Beyond Beef Crumbles. Their retail presence exploded, going from 1,500 to 6,000 stores, with heavyweights like Safeway joining the party. But Beyond Meat wasn't just shaking up the food industry. They were making waves in the innovation world. Fast Company named them one of the 50 most innovative companies in the world that year, rubbing elbows with the likes of Google and Amazon. A veggie burger company in the same league as tech titans? Yeah, it was that kind of year. In 2016, Beyond Meat hit full throttle with the launch of the Beyond Burger, made from pea protein, coconut oil, and potato starch. It took plant-based innovation to a whole new level by actually bleeding, mimicking real beef in a way that was both impressive and a little mind-bending. Vegans could finally have their steak and eat it too, right? But while the vegan market was buzzing, it wasn't exactly a gold mine for investors. Vegetarians are only about 3% of the US population, and even with that niche growing, it wasn't bringing in big bucks. So why were there so many VCs rushing to invest? Well, that's when it became clear that Beyond Meat wasn't just going after the vegan crowd. They were gunning for the entire US meat market, valued at a staggering $170 billion. That's what we call the total addressable market, or TAM in business speak. The broadest measure of market opportunity. It's an extremely large playing field, and Beyond Meat was trying to bulldoze the whole industry. And let's be real, that's a whole lot of beef to take on. But that's also why investors were throwing money at them, fueling their R&D and expansion. A $170 billion opportunity doesn't come around every day. Here's the thing though. The TAM is often way bigger than any one company can realistically capture. So was Beyond Meat shooting for the impossible? Because sooner or later, other competitors would inevitably be cannibalizing their market share. In fact, that same year, Impossible Foods launched their own flagship burger. But Beyond Meat wasn't phased though. They capitalized on the growing flexitarian trend. That's where people eat more plant-based foods without fully ditching meat. And if there was ever a sign they were onto something, It also came that year when Tyson Foods, one of the largest meat producers in the world, bought a 5% stake in the company. But there was one thing about Beyond Meat that left a lot of people with sticker shock: the price. These burgers weren't just designed to look like meat. They were priced like a luxury upgrade. In some grocery stores, a pack of Beyond Burgers costs more than real beef. A typical beef burger costs less than a cup of coffee. But here comes Beyond Meat, asking you to pay $8 for 2 patties made from peas. You could practically buy a cow for the price of a pack of patties, which raises the question: if you're trying to win over meat eaters, people who already think plant-based food is a compromise, shouldn't price be a part of the strategy? And if you're targeting vegans, well, good luck convincing someone who's been getting their protein from $1 cans of chickpeas to suddenly shell out $8 for pea protein in patty form. It put Beyond Meat in a weird middle ground: too expensive for meat lovers and too pricey for the vegans. And while they were struggling to thread that needle, traditional meat companies had an ace up their sleeves: subsidies. For decades, the US government has poured money into the meat industry, making burgers, chicken nuggets, and hot dogs artificially cheap. But here's the twist: Beyond Meat wasn't totally boxed out either. The US also heavily subsidizes soy, peas, grains, and oils, aka the building blocks of a plant-based burger. So why couldn't Beyond Meat compete on price? Simple. Science is expensive. While cows have been evolving for millions of years, Beyond Meat's burger is evolving in a lab. And you're paying for the privilege of being a guinea pig. When your whole business is based on out-innovating nature, the R&D will burn cash faster than a burger on high heat. And yet, that was the bet investors were making. This wasn't a burger company. It was a tech company disguised as food. In 2017, Beyond Meat exploded with triple-digit growth, fueled by the rise of plant-based proteins and the growing flexitarian crowd. They closed a major funding round led by former McDonald's CEO Don Thompson and forged a partnership with TGI Fridays to add their products to the menu. Then in December, they launched the Beyond Sausage, a plant-based alternative to pork sausage, proving they were ready to take on even more of the meat market. By 2018, Beyond Meat was still exploding. They had partnered with A&W Canada, making them the first chain in Canada to offer the Beyond Burger. They snagged the UN's Champions of the Earth Award alongside who? Impossible Foods, for their sustainable meat alternatives. This was a clear sign that their competition was heating up too. But ask them, and they'd probably tell you they weren't just selling burgers, they were changing the world. And they were about to sell that story harder than ever. In the lead up to their IPO, Beyond Meat didn't just double down on marketing. They built an army, not of chefs and nutritionists, but athletes and celebrities. Kyrie Irving, Shaquille O'Neal, Chris Paul, DeAndre Hopkins, Lindsey Vonn, Snoop Dogg, Leonardo DiCaprio, and the list went on forever. Now, they weren't just brand partners. Many were investors, and their job was simple: convince you that eating plants could make you perform like a pro. Of course, critics had a field day. Many of these names were hardly known for clean eating, but it did not really matter. Beyond Meat wasn't selling tofu to vegans. They were selling performance to the mainstream. And when they IPO'd in May 2019, the hype machine delivered. Shares were initially priced at $25, they opened at $42, closing the day at $65. By the next day, $87. The next month, over $150. And 2 months later, over $200. It was the best performing IPO in nearly 2 decades. Beyond Meat had officially become a decacorn. Yes, a $10 billion company built on peas, beans, and marketing genius. But not everyone was buying the dream. By September, Forbes issued a warning shot. Beyond Meat is now probably the hottest stock in the world, but the stock price has gone far beyond what fundamentals can justify. Translation: great burger, even better story, but was it getting cooked a little too hot? Over the next few months, the stock price cooled. Reality has a way of doing that. And then came early 2020. You already know what happened. The pandemic hit. Meat supply chains broke down. Processing plants shut their doors. Grocery shelves were empty. And for a minute, just a minute, Beyond Meat thought this was their moment. The world was in chaos. Traditional meat was nowhere to be found. And there it was, Beyond Meat, fully stocked, front and center. They had invested in more shelf space, expanded their grocery presence, and ramped up production, betting big that this was their time to shine. But catch this, people still weren't buying it. Walk down the meat aisle in 2020, and it was almost comical. The shelves were wiped clean. No chicken, no beef, no pork in sight, except for the plant-based stuff. Beyond Meat patties just sitting there, fully stocked, untouched. Look, their sales did go up. Revenue increased 36% that year, hitting over $400 million. Was it good? Sure. Was it impressive for a company that was supposed to change the world? The future of food? The next big thing? Honestly, not really. For all the hype, for all the headlines, for all the celebrity partnerships, when push came to shove, most people did not want to eat fake meat unless they absolutely had to. And in business, that's a problem. To be fair, Beyond probably lost a slice of the very market they created, because by this time, all the big players had shown up with their own take on the oxymoronic plant-based meat. Tyson, Nestle, Hormel, Smithfield. The meat giants saw dollar signs, and they weren't about to let a scrappy startup steal their lunch. Suddenly, plant-based meat wasn't just Beyond Meat's story. It was everyone's. And that created a new problem. See, at first, eating a Beyond Burger felt like a statement. It was bold, disruptive, and cool. But when everyone's doing it, when every frozen aisle is packed with alt meat patties, it's not cool anymore. It's just a grocery item. The novelty wore off, and brand loyalty eroded fast. Despite all this, 2021 was a crucial year for Beyond Meat, and they made a big bet to keep the dream alive. The company's revenue grew only by 14% that year, nowhere near the explosive growth they had hoped for. Losses were mounting, liquidity was shrinking, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Beyond Meat needed more cash to stay afloat. So what did they do? Beyond Meat issued $1 billion of convertible senior notes. Basically, debt that could later be turned into shares if the stock price recovered, or have to be paid back in cash if it didn't. So if the stock soared, no problem. Note holders would convert to equity, and Beyond Meat would avoid a huge cash payout. But if things got worse, they would be staring down a billion-dollar bill in 2027, whether they were ready for it or not. And for Beyond Meat, spoiler alert, it didn't. 2022 arrived like a storm cloud, brewing a thunderous wave of awareness that crashed hard against the shiny marketing and healthy image facade that Beyond Meat had worked so hard to build. For years, the company had expertly painted a picture of innovation, making plant-based burgers seem like the holy grail of modern, healthy eating. But the rhetoric of being a healthier alternative to traditional meat began to unravel as the public grew more aware of what went into plant-based burgers. Processing, additives, and a laundry list of unpronounceable ingredients that painted a less than virtuous portrait of the brand. And then came the whispers. No, the shouts of health experts, nutritionists, and even well-meaning consumers. Sure, these burgers were vegan, but they were far from the clean, whole foods that the plant-based community had long advocated for. Beyond was trying to convince us that a plant-based burger made in a lab was far better than fast food beef patty, even though it was loaded with the same chemical concoctions. Then, in May 2022, they did something that did not help their case at all. Beyond Meat hired Kim Kardashian as their chief taste consultant. You heard that right. The same Kim Kardashian, famous for, well, being Kim Kardashian, to give expert insight on how their plant-based burgers taste. Talk about inauthentic marketing. If there's one thing the plant-based community values, it's real, clean food. Needless to say, it didn't go over well. By mid-2022, the company was reeling. Beyond had lost around 87% of its market value, plummeting from its all-time high of $234 in 2019 to a mere $30 per share. Then, to top it off, things got even messier. In September, the company's COO, Doug Ramsey, made headlines for all the wrong reasons, getting arrested for biting a man's nose during a road rage incident. Maybe he thought the guy was a soy burger? By the end of 2022, sales had contracted by over 10% from the previous year. But the real damage came from missed earnings expectations. The company couldn't meet any of the numbers investors were hoping for. And when those earnings missed, by a long shot, the stock went into freefall. Beyond Meat ended up laying off 19% of its workforce in a desperate attempt to cut costs as their financials deteriorated. As the sun dawned in 2023, it became painfully clear just how deep the damage went. Beyond Meat had officially aimed for cash flow positive operations in the second half of 2023. But by mid-year, they quietly acknowledged that this target was out of reach. By year-end, revenue had dropped again, this time by 18%. Hop over to their balance sheet. Total assets were sitting at $774 million, but the liabilities, a whopping $1.2 billion. That's not just a bad look. It's a full-on financial train wreck. Beyond Meat was now in a situation where its liabilities were twice the size of its assets. Imagine having a $100K salary, but owing $200K to your creditors. How's that for a nightmare scenario? They were now in insolvency territory, desperately trying to dodge a financial collapse. To add fuel to the fire, reports of mold and contamination issues started surfacing from their manufacturing plants. Just when things couldn't get worse, food safety issues were on the table. And if that wasn't enough, some of the big food companies realized plant-based meat wasn't the gold mine they thought it would be. Tyson launched an alt-meat burger and failed. Nestle pulled back its meat-free brands. Maple Leaf Foods, one of the early adopters, had to reassess its whole plant-based strategy. Turns out, people weren't eating these products because they loved them. They were eating them because they were curious. And curiosity fades. The outlook on the whole plant-based meat segment was tanking. By 2024, the proverbial writing on the wall was flashing in neon. And for Beyond Meat, the come down would be brutal. Big retailers like Walmart started trimming shelf space. Translation: if your product isn't flying off the shelves, it's losing you money, and grocers don't like dead weight. Beyond Meat quietly started disappearing from freezer aisles across the country. Then came the McDonald's blow. The McPlant, once Beyond Meat's crown jewel partnership, was officially scrapped in the US. A huge corporate level ghosting. Investors took the hint. By March 2024, Beyond Meat's stock crashed below $10, a staggering 95% drop from its $234 all-time high. And inside the company, total chaos. Remember those massive advertising campaigns we told you about? Yeah, those came back to bite. In 2023, a wave of lawsuits slammed Beyond Meat with allegations of false advertising. And by this time, in late 2024, they quietly agreed to a $7.5 million class action settlement. So much for plant-based transparency. Other fast food chains quietly started pulling Beyond Meat off their menus too. And yet, in the middle of all this, Beyond Meat tried to claw its way back. They launched a reformulated line, the Beyond 4. Less saturated fat, lower sodium, more protein, avocado oil, simpler ingredients. It was cleaner, healthier, smarter. But here's the thing. It's really hard to sell a new and improved version of something when people have already moved on. Because this wasn't just a product problem anymore, it was a perception problem. And when perception shifts, brands rarely come back from that. By the end of the year, the numbers told an all too familiar story. Revenue fell another 5%, a slow, steady slide downhill. Worse, total assets kept shrinking, while liabilities barely budged, meaning they were more insolvent than before. So what do you do when sales are drying up, investors are fleeing, and your debt looks like a mountain you'll never climb? You look for a lifeline. In early 2025, news broke that Beyond Meat had tapped PJT Partners, a Wall Street investment bank, to help them raise $250 million. Not for growth, not for innovation, just to keep the lights on. A lot of that cash would go towards their looming $1.15 billion in convertible bonds maturing in 2027. Basically, a ticking financial time bomb. This isn't a growth story anymore. It's a company in triage, patching holes in the boat while taking on water. So will they last until 2027? Will they actually get that $250 million loan? Maybe. Wall Street loves a risky bet, especially if there are fees attached. But even if they scrape together the cash, money doesn't fix a brand problem. And Beyond Meat doesn't just need capital. They need consumers to actually want their product. Maybe it could have been a different story. Maybe if they stayed focused, nailed the product, won over real, loyal customers before chasing every grocery aisle and every fast food menu on the planet. But they didn't. They tried to do too much, too fast. And when the hype wore off, all that was left was the product. And the truth, most people don't think it tastes like real meat. It doesn't feel like real meat. And let's be honest, it kinda smells weird. Right now, the stock is trading at less than $3, and their 12 billion market cap has been decimated to around $220 million. Only time will tell what happens from here. I know what I think, but you tell me, is Beyond Meat cooked? Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.